The distress signal. The emergency beacon cut through the silence of deep space like a scream. Captain Zara Okonkwo sat up in her quarters aboard the merchant vessel Horizon's Edge, her heart already racing before she fully understood why. "Captain, to the bridge," the night officer's voice crackled through the intercom. "We've picked up a distress signal. You need to see this." Zara pulled on her uniform and made her way through the narrow corridors of her ship. The Horizon's Edge was old, bought third-hand from a Polarian trading company, but it was hers. She had spent 5 years running cargo between human colonies and alien trade stations, building a reputation for reliability. The bridge was small, designed for a crew of 6. Tonight, only 3 were on duty. First Officer Marcus Webb stood at the communications console, his dark skin illuminated by the blue glow of the displays. "What do we have?" Zara asked. "Distress beacon from a Korthan vessel," Marcus said. "The Pride of Zenith. They're reporting catastrophic engine failure and life support degradation. The impossible situation." Zara felt her stomach tighten. The Korthan were not friends of humanity. They tolerated human presence in their space, but barely. They viewed humans as primitive newcomers who had stumbled into galactic civilization by accident rather than merit. "Location?" she asked. 40 light minutes from our position. They're drifting toward the Nerian asteroid field. If they enter it without power, the gravitational forces will tear them apart. Time until they reach the field? Marcus checked his calculations. 6 hours. Maybe 7 if they're lucky. Zara pulled up the tactical display. The Korthan ship appeared as a red dot slowly moving toward the amber zone that marked the asteroid field. It was a large vessel, probably carrying 300 crew members. "Have they requested assistance?" Zara asked. "Negative. They're broadcasting on emergency frequencies, but they haven't specifically asked for help. I think they're waiting for a Korthan rescue ship." "Nearest Korthan vessel?" Marcus hesitated. 12 hours away. They won't make it in time. The decision. The bridge fell silent. Everyone understood what those numbers meant. 300 Korthan would die unless someone helped them. And the only ship close enough was human. "Send them a message," Zara said. "Tell them we're available to assist." "Captain," Marcus said carefully, "the Korthan don't accept help from humans. It's a cultural thing. They view it as admitting inferiority. They can view it however they want. Send the message." Marcus transmitted the offer. They waited in silence for the response. When it came, the Korthan captain's voice was cold and clipped. "Human vessel, your offer is declined. We will await proper assistance from our own fleet." "Captain Theron," Zara replied, "my calculations show you won't survive that long. Let us help you. We do not require assistance from lesser species." This conversation is concluded. The channel went dead. The Korthan Pride. Zara stared at the display, watching the red dot inch closer to the asteroid field. 300 lives. 300 beings who would die because of pride. "Captain?" Marcus asked quietly. "What do we do?" Zara had been in space long enough to understand alien cultures. The Korthan were warriors, builders of a vast empire. They had conquered 40 systems before humanity had even achieved faster-than-light travel. Their entire society was built on concepts of honor, strength, and superiority. Accepting help from humans would be worse than death in their culture. It would be shame that lasted generations. But Zara was human. And humans had different values. "Plot an intercept course," she said. "Maximum speed." "Captain, they refused our help." "I heard them." "Plot the course anyway." Marcus smiled slightly. "Yes, Captain." The race against time. The Horizon's Edge was not built for speed, but Zara pushed the old ship harder than she had ever pushed it before. The engines rattled and complained, but they held. "Engineering," she called over the intercom, "I need every bit of power you can give me." Chief Engineer Lisa Park's voice came back, tinged with worry. Captain, we're already at 110% capacity. If I push it harder, we risk a cascade failure. Noted. Push it harder anyway. Yes, ma'am. The ship shuddered as additional power flooded into the engines. They were burning fuel at an unsustainable rate, but fuel could be replaced. Lives could not. Time to intercept? Zara asked. 5 hours, 40 minutes, Marcus reported. They'll enter the asteroid field in 6 hours, 10 minutes. We'll have a 30-minute window. That's assuming they don't do anything stupid, said Navigation Officer Chen from his station. Define stupid, Zara said. If they see us approaching and try to maneuver away from us, they'll burn what little power they have left. They could destabilize their orbit and hit the field early. Zara nodded slowly. So we can't let them know we're coming. How do we hide a ship this size? Marcus asked. The stealth approach. We don't hide the ship, Zara said. We hide our intentions. Chen, adjust our course. Make it look like we're heading to the mining station on the other side of the field. We just happen to be passing near their position. Chen's fingers flew across his console. Course adjusted. It'll add 10 minutes to our intercept time. We'll make it work. Marcus, cut all communications to the Corthan vessel. If they hail us, we don't respond. Captain, that's against protocol. So is letting 300 people die. Do it. The Horizon's Edge flew on through the darkness of space. On the bridge, the crew watched the displays in tense silence. The Corthan ship continued its slow drift toward destruction. The asteroid field loomed ahead, a chaotic maze of rock and ice and death. The approach. 5 hours passed. Then 5.5. Zara felt every second like a weight on her chest. 15 minutes to intercept, Marcus announced. The Corthan ship is showing signs of environmental failure. Their hull temperature is dropping. Life support is failing. Prepare towing cables, Zara ordered. And get me a volunteer team for EVA work. Captain, if we attach towing cables, we'll need to match their spin. The Pride of Zenith is tumbling. It's going to be dangerous. I know. That's why I asked for volunteers. 6 crew members stepped forward immediately. All humans. All willing to risk their lives for beings who had insulted them, rejected them, and would probably never thank them. Zara looked at her crew and felt something swell in her chest. Pride, yes, but also something deeper. This was what humanity was. Not the strongest species. Not the smartest. Not the most advanced. But perhaps the most stubborn, the most determined, and the most willing to do what was right even when it was hard. The Corthan response. Captain, Marcus said urgently, the Corthan vessel is hailing us. They've detected our approach. Zara took a breath. Put them through. Captain Theron's face appeared on screen. He looked worse than before, his skin showing the blue tinge of oxygen deprivation. Behind him, Zara could see other Corthan crew members slumped at their stations. Human vessel, Theron said, his voice weak but still carrying an edge of anger. You were ordered to stay away. Captain Theron, Zara replied calmly, we're just passing through. Heading to the mining station. We haven't altered course toward you at all. It was technically true. Their current course would take them past the Corthan ship, not directly to it. The fact that they planned to alter course at the last moment was a detail she didn't mention. You lie, Theron said. Your trajectory is too convenient. Think what you want. But if you happen to see some towing cables drift past your ship in about 10 minutes, it might be worth grabbing them. Just a thought. She cut the transmission before he could respond. Deploy the EVA team, she ordered. Let's save some lives. The towing operation. The next 30 minutes were the most terrifying of Zara's career. Her crew worked in the vacuum of space, matching the tumbling spin of the Corthan vessel, attaching towing cables to hard points on the massive hull. Every second counted. The asteroid field drew closer. Inside the Corthan ship, Captain Theron watched through his failing viewports as humans risked their lives to save his crew. His pride screamed at him to refuse, to maintain honor, to accept death rather than shame. But as he looked at his crew, dying slowly from cold and oxygen loss, he realized something. Humans didn't care about Corthan honor. They didn't care about ancient hatreds or cultural superiority. They just saw people who needed help. And they helped anyway. "Secure those cables," he whispered to his remaining crew. "Make sure they hold the tow." The Horizon's Edge strained as it began towing the much larger Corthan vessel. Engines that were already pushed past their limits now screamed in protest. Metal groaned. Warning lights flashed across every console. "Hull stress at critical levels," Chen reported. "Life support showing fluctuations," Marcus added. "Keep pulling," Zara ordered. "We're not stopping until they're clear." Slowly, agonizingly, the two ships changed course. The edge of the asteroid field passed within 1,000 kilometers, close enough to see individual rocks on the view screen, close enough to feel the gravitational pull trying to tear them apart. Then they were past. Clear. Safe. On the bridge of the Horizon's Edge, the crew erupted in cheers. Zara allowed herself a small smile before opening a channel to the Corthan vessel. "Captain Theron, you're clear of the field. Corthan rescue ships should reach you within 6 hours. We'll maintain the tow until they arrive." There was a long silence. Then Theron's voice came through, quiet and strange. "Why?" he asked. "Why did you help us when we refused you? When we insulted you?" Zara thought about all the complex reasons, all the philosophical arguments about the value of life and the responsibility of spacers to help each other. But in the end, the answer was simple. "Because it was the right thing to do," she said. "That's reason enough." The Galactic Assembly. The summons. 3 weeks after the rescue, Zara received a message that changed everything. The Galactic Assembly, the governing body that oversaw relations between the 73 known spacefaring species, requested her presence at their headquarters on Unity Station. Requested or demanded? Marcus asked when she shared the news. The message said cordially invited, Zara replied, but it came with a priority code. "I don't think refusing is an option." The Horizon's Edge was still undergoing repairs from the strain of towing the Corthan vessel. The engineering team had found microfractures in the hull and stress damage to the main engines. It would take weeks to fix properly. "I don't like this," Lisa Park said, wiping grease from her hands. "Why would the assembly care about one rescue mission?" "Because it wasn't just any rescue," Marcus said quietly. "The Corthan are one of the founding species of the assembly. We saved one of their capital ships. That's not something they can ignore." Unity Station. Unity Station orbited a neutral star system, a massive construct built by dozens of species working together. It was a monument to cooperation, a place where ancient enemies sat in the same councils and worked toward common goals. Zara had never been there before. Most independent human traders hadn't. The assembly dealt with governments and megacorporations, not small merchant captains. The shuttle from Horizon's Edge docked at one of the hundreds of ports that dotted the station's outer hull. As Zara stepped out, she found herself face to face with a Polarian diplomat named Jestrin. The Polarian were tall, slender beings with iridescent skin that shifted colors based on their emotions. Right now, Jestrin's skin showed deep purple, a color Zara's cultural database identified as indicating respect. "Captain Okonkwo," Jestrin said in perfect English, "welcome to Unity Station. I will escort you to the assembly chamber." "What is this about?" Zara asked as they walked through corridors filled with aliens of every description. "You will learn soon enough. But I can tell you this, what you did has caused quite a stir. The Corthan have requested a formal hearing. Many species want to understand why a human acted as you did." The assembly chamber. The chamber was enormous, designed to hold representatives from all 73 member species. Seats rose in concentric circles around a central platform where speakers addressed the assembly. Zara stood on that platform now, feeling very small and very alone. Above her, hundreds of aliens watched from their seats. Some looked curious. Others hostile. Some unreadable. At the highest tier sat the Corthan delegation. Captain Theron was among them, looking healthier than the last time she had seen him but no friendlier. The assembly speaker, an ancient Dralian whose species had been exploring space when humans still lived in caves, called the session to order. "We are gathered to discuss an incident 3 weeks ago," the speaker said, its translated voice filling the chamber. The human Captain Zara Okonkwo rendered aid to a Corthan vessel despite explicit refusal of such aid. "Captain Theron has brought concerns to this assembly." Zara felt her stomach drop. She had saved 300 lives, and now she was being put on trial for it? The accusation. Captain Theron stood, his large frame imposing even from a distance. "Honored assembly," he began, "I stand before you to address a grave matter. The human captain violated our clearly stated wishes. When we refused assistance, she ignored us. She acted against our explicit orders." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Zara could see agreement on many faces. Consent was important in galactic law. Had she really violated it? In Corthan culture, Theron continued, accepting aid from a lesser species is a profound shame. Captain Okonkwo's actions dishonored not just me and my crew, but our entire people. She forced us into a position where we must acknowledge debt to humans, a species we have long viewed as inferior. The murmurs grew louder. Zara felt anger building in her chest, but she forced it down. Getting emotional would not help. However, Theron said, and the chamber fell silent. "I am not here to condemn her." The defense. Theron's scales rippled, a sign of strong emotion in his species. "I am here to confess my own shame. My pride nearly killed 300 of my crew. I was willing to let them die rather than accept help from humans because I believed Corthan honor was more important than Corthan lives." He looked directly at Zara. "Captain Okonkwo showed me the flaw in our thinking. She valued life over pride. She valued action over tradition. She did what was right even though it was hard, even though we insulted her, even though she knew we would not thank her." The assembly watched in stunned silence as one of the proud Corthan captains continued. "The question before this assembly is not whether Captain Okonkwo violated our wishes. She did. The question is whether she was right to do so. And I stand before you to say yes, she was right. She was better than us. Her species, so young in the stars, understood something we had forgotten, that the preservation of life matters more than the preservation of pride." The debate. The assembly erupted into discussion. Representatives from dozens of species wanted to speak. The debate lasted for hours. Some argued that Zara had violated fundamental principles of consent and autonomy. Others argued that emergency situations required emergency actions. Some praised her courage. Others feared the precedent her actions would set. A Torvian senator stood, its compound eyes glittering. "We have all heard stories of human stubbornness, of their refusal to accept defeat. But this is different. This is a human choosing to act against clear orders because she believed lives were more important than protocol. This is not stubbornness. This is wisdom." A Nefter delegate disagreed. "If we allow captains to ignore the wishes of those they rescue, where does it end? What if a species has religious beliefs about accepting help? What if they prefer death to violation of their values? Then they die," a human voice said. Everyone turned. In the human delegation section, Ambassador Chen had stood. He was an older man, a career diplomat who had spent decades building relationships between humanity and other species. "If a species prefers death to life," Chen continued, "that is their choice. But Captain Okonkwo did not make that choice for the Corthan. She simply gave them time to reconsider. She created a situation where they could choose to live. And they did choose life. They grabbed those towing cables. They secured them. They accepted the rescue, even if they did not ask for it. The human philosophy. The speaker gestured for Zara to speak. She had been standing silently through all the debate, but now all eyes turned to her. I am not a philosopher, Zara began. I am not a diplomat. I am just a merchant captain who makes cargo runs between stations. But I grew up on Earth, and Earth taught humanity some harsh lessons. She pulled up a holographic display showing images of Earth's history. Wars, disasters, famines, pandemics. Centuries of humans struggling to survive. My species almost destroyed itself many times, Zara said. We fought wars that killed millions. We created weapons that could end all life on our planet. We polluted our air and water. We nearly made our own world uninhabitable. The images shifted to show humans working together. Building. Healing. Exploring. But we learned something from all that suffering. We learned that life is precious. We learned that when you see someone drowning, you don't ask their permission before throwing them a lifeline. You act first and discuss philosophy later. Because a living person can argue with you about whether you should have helped them. A dead person cannot. The cultural clash. A Vraxian representative stood, its crystalline body refracting light across the chamber. But that is human thinking. Other species have different values. The Korthan prize honor. My people prize logic. The Polarian prize beauty. Who are humans to say their values are superior? We don't say our values are superior, Zara replied. We say life is valuable. That is not a human value. That is a universal truth. Every species here developed medicine because they valued life. Every species here has laws against murder because they value life. The Korthan saved people prize honor, but only because they are alive to prize it. She looked up at Captain Theron. The captain said I dishonored him. Maybe I did. But I gave him the chance to continue living with that dishonor, to learn from it, to perhaps teach his people that there are things more important than pride. That is not my human philosophy forcing itself on Korthan culture. That is just giving people the opportunity to choose. The testimony. Other voices joined the debate. A Polarian doctor spoke about the universal medical ethic of preserving life. A Torvian soldier spoke about battlefield rescues where consent was impossible to obtain. A Neftar philosopher discussed the concept of implied consent in emergency situations. But the most powerful testimony came from an unexpected source. A young Korthan officer stood in the gallery. Her scales showed the green hue of youth. Honored assembly, she said, I was aboard the Pride of Zenith. I was one of the crew members Captain Theron was willing to let die for honor. She looked at Theron with an expression that was hard to read. I understand our culture. I understand the importance of honor. But when I was dying from cold and oxygen loss, when I thought I would never see my family again, I was grateful that a human ignored our captain's pride. I was grateful that someone valued my life more than our traditions. Theron's scales flickered with emotion, but he said nothing. The vote. The debate continued for another hour before the speaker finally called for a vote. The question was simple: did Captain Okonkwo act appropriately given the circumstances? Representatives from 73 species voted. The results appeared on the central display. 61 species voted in favor. 8 voted against. 4 abstained. Captain Okonkwo, the speaker said, this assembly finds that your actions, while controversial, were justified given the emergency nature of the situation. You are not only cleared of any wrongdoing, but the assembly wishes to recognize your actions with the Star of Unity, our highest honor for those who exemplify the best principles of galactic cooperation. Zara felt dizzy. She had expected punishment, not praise. However, the speaker continued, your actions have raised important questions about consent, culture, and emergency response. This assembly will establish a committee to develop clearer guidelines for such situations. We invite you to participate in this committee's work. The aftermath. After the session ended, Zara found herself surrounded by diplomats and officials from dozens of species. They all wanted to talk to her, to understand human thinking, to discuss philosophy and ethics. She felt overwhelmed until Captain Theron appeared beside her. The crowd parted for the large Korthan warrior. "Captain Okonkwo," he said formally, "may I speak with you privately?" They walked to an observation deck overlooking the stars. For a long moment, neither spoke. "I have been a captain for 30 years, Theron finally said. "I have commanded ships through battles, through storms, through impossible situations. I thought I understood leadership. I thought I understood strength." He turned to face her. "Then you showed me what real strength looks like. Not the strength to fight or conquer, but the strength to do what is right even when it is hard, even when it is unwanted, even when there is no reward." "I did not do it for reward," Zara said. "I know. That is what makes it remarkable. My species has spent 10,000 years building an empire based on honor and strength. We measure ourselves by our victories, our territories, our power. But you showed me that we have been measuring the wrong things." The lesson. The young officer who testified, Theron continued, "She is my daughter. I did not know she was on the crew roster. If you had not ignored my pride, if you had respected my wishes, I would have killed my own child." Zara saw the pain in his eyes and felt a wave of compassion. "You were following your culture's values. That is not wrong." "Perhaps our culture's values are wrong," Theron said quietly. "Perhaps we have been so focused on honor that we forgot what honor was supposed to protect: our people, our families, our future. You humans, so young in the stars, remembered what we forgot." He reached into his uniform and pulled out a small object. It was a Korthan honor blade, the kind captains carried as symbols of their rank. "In my culture, when a warrior learns a profound lesson from another, they offer their honor blade as a sign of respect and commitment to change. I offer you mine." Zara took the blade carefully. It was beautifully crafted, the handle inscribed with Korthan symbols she could not read. "What do they say?" she asked. "They say life before honor, truth before pride." Theron smiled slightly. "They have always said that. But we stopped seeing those words centuries ago. Perhaps it is time we remembered them." The ripple effect. 3 months later. The Horizon's Edge completed its repairs and returned to cargo runs. But things had changed. The story of the rescue had spread across the galaxy, carried by news services, told in trading posts, discussed in universities. Humanity became known not as conquerors or warriors, but as the species that valued life above all else. Trade agreements improved. Diplomatic relationships strengthened. Human ships were welcomed in ports that had previously been closed to them. But the real changes were more subtle. The Korthan reform. On the Korthan homeworld, Captain Theron had returned as a different person. He spoke openly about his experience, about how human actions had saved his crew and challenged his entire worldview. Many Korthan were angry. They saw his words as betrayal of their culture. But others, especially younger Korthan, listened carefully. They began asking questions about whether honor was worth more than life. A movement started, small at first. Korthan officers began including emergency rescue protocols in their training, acknowledging that accepting help was not weakness. Korthan philosophers started debating the nature of true strength. The Korthan Council, watching this shift, made a controversial decision. They established diplomatic relations with Earth, not just trade relationships. For the first time in their history, they sought to learn from a younger species rather than conquer or ignore them. The Medical Revolution. Dr. Sarah Chan, the chief medical officer on Unity Station, received an unexpected visitor 3 months after the assembly hearing. It was a Nephter doctor named Sithrix, a being whose species was known for cold logic and calculation. "Dr. Chen," Sithrix said, "I wish to study human medical ethics." "Your species has a principle called do no harm, yes?" "The Hippocratic Oath," Sarah confirmed. "First, do no harm. It is one of the oldest principles in human medicine." "I find it fascinating," Sithrix said. Nefter medicine is based on efficiency calculations. We save the patients with the best chance of survival because it maximizes resources. But watching the assembly hearing, I realized we may be calculating the wrong variables. What do you mean? A Korthan captain was willing to let 300 people die for honor. We Nefter are willing to let people die for efficiency. But humans seem to believe that every individual life has inherent value that cannot be calculated or compared. Is this true? Sarah thought carefully about her answer. Yes. We believe every person deserves care, regardless of their chances of survival, regardless of the cost. It is not always practical. It is not always efficient. But it is what makes us human. The Collaborative Center. 6 months after the rescue, Unity Station opened a new facility, the Center for Universal Life Sciences. It was funded by 20 different species and designed to study one question: what could the galaxy learn from human attitudes toward the value of life? Scientists and philosophers from across known space gathered there. They studied human history, human culture, human ethics. They debated and discussed and disagreed and learned. A Torvian sociologist published a paper that became famous across the galaxy, The Survival Paradox: How Humanity's Weakness Became Their Strength. The paper argued that humans, being physically weak compared to most spacefaring species, had developed strong social bonds as a survival mechanism. They learned to value cooperation, to help the weak, to never leave anyone behind. What other species saw as inefficiency, humans saw as essential to survival. Humans did not become strong despite their compassion, the paper concluded. They became strong because of it. Their willingness to help others, even at great cost to themselves, created societies where every individual knew they would be supported. This created psychological resilience that allowed them to face seemingly impossible challenges. The Rescue Protocol. The Assembly Committee on Emergency Response, which included Zara as a member, worked for 8 months developing new guidelines. The final document became known as the Okonkwo Protocol, named after the captain whose actions had started the whole discussion. The protocol established clear rules for emergency situations. In immediate life-threatening situations, rescuers may act without explicit consent if delay would result in death. Rescued parties retain the right to refuse further assistance once immediate danger has passed. Cultural and religious considerations should be respected whenever possible, but preservation of life takes priority in true emergencies. Species that wish to refuse rescue under any circumstances must file formal declarations with the Assembly, acknowledging the consequences. Not every species agreed with the protocol. Some felt it violated autonomy. But the majority accepted it, recognizing that some principles needed to transcend cultural differences. The human colonies. On Earth and the 12 human colonies, people followed the news with pride and confusion. They had been rescued, yes, but they had also sparked a galactic philosophical revolution. We did not mean to change anything, Ambassador Chen said in an interview. We just acted according to our values. We saw people in danger and helped them. It is what humans do. But why? The interviewer asked. Other species do not automatically help their enemies. Why do humans? Chen thought for a long moment. Because we remember what it is like to be helpless. Humans spent millions of years being prey animals, being threatened by creatures stronger and faster than us. We survived by working together, by helping each other. That is in our DNA now. We cannot see someone suffering without wanting to help. The trade station incident. The true test of the new protocol came 9 months after the Korthan rescue. A Vraxian cargo ship suffered a reactor breach near a busy trade station. The ship sent a distress call but specifically requested that only Vraxian vessels respond, citing religious reasons. The nearest ship was human, a cargo hauler called the Starbound Hope. Captain James Kamathi faced a choice. Respect the Vraxian request and watch the ship explode, or invoke the Okonkwo Protocol and attempt rescue. He chose rescue. The Starbound Hope approached the failing Vraxian vessel and began evacuating crew through emergency airlocks. The Vraxian captain protested throughout, citing religious law that forbade physical contact with non-crystalline species. But when the reactor finally exploded, all 83 Vraxian crew members were safe aboard the human ship. The aftermath was complicated. The Vraxian captain filed a formal complaint with the assembly. But 42 of his crew members filed counter-complaints, thanking Captain Kamathi for ignoring their captain's demands. "Our religion values life," one Vraxian crew member testified. "Our captain was wrong to interpret our laws as requiring death rather than accepting help. Captain Kamathi understood our faith better than our own captain did." The new philosophy. Slowly, across the galaxy, a shift began. Species that had viewed humans as weak newcomers started to see them differently. Not as warriors or conquerors, but as something potentially more powerful, catalysts for change. The Polarian opened schools teaching human philosophy. The Torvian included human ethical case studies in their military training. Even the proud Korthan began teaching their children about the day when humans showed them the difference between honor and pride. Zara continued running cargo between stations, but now she received requests from universities asking her to speak, from governments asking her to advise on policy, from captains asking her to share her experiences. She declined most of them. "I am not a hero," she told Marcus one day as they prepared for another routine cargo run. "I just did what anyone should do." "But that is the point," Marcus replied. "You did what anyone should do, but what most species would not do. You made them question their own assumptions. That is more powerful than any weapon." The return to Korthan space. 1 year after the rescue, the Horizon's Edge received an invitation that Zara could not refuse. The Korthan government requested her presence at a ceremony on their homeworld. She arrived to find thousands of Korthan gathered at their capital's main plaza. Captain Theron met her at the landing pad, now promoted to admiral. "What is this?" Zara asked. "Come and see." He led her to the center of the plaza where a monument stood, newly constructed. It showed a human figure reaching out to help a Korthan figure up from the ground. The inscription was in both languages. "Life before honor. Truth before pride. Let us never forget what we learned from those who had the courage to ignore our pride and save our lives." The monument honors the crew of the Horizon's Edge, Theron explained, "and all humans who taught us that true strength is not in conquest but in compassion." Zara felt tears in her eyes. "I did not do this for recognition." "I know. That is why we honor you. Because you did what was right when there was no reward, no glory, no thanks. You did it because it needed to be done." The speech. The Korthan leadership asked Zara to speak to the assembled crowd. She stood on the platform, looking out at thousands of faces from a species that had once viewed humans as inferior. "I am honored by this monument," she began, "but I do not deserve it. Any human captain would have done the same thing. We would do it again tomorrow if necessary. Because this is who humans are." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "We are not the strongest species. We are not the smartest. We are not the oldest or the most advanced. But we learned something during our millions of years struggling to survive on a dangerous planet. We learned that life is precious. We learned that every person matters. We learned that the true measure of a civilization is not how powerful it is, but how it treats those who are vulnerable." The crowd listened in silence. "You honor me today," Zara continued, "but I hope you will honor something more important. Honor the principle that life matters more than pride. Honor the idea that helping others is not weakness but the highest form of strength. Honor the belief that we are all connected, all valuable, all worthy of being saved." The promise. After the ceremony, young Korthan officers approached Zara with questions. They wanted to understand human thinking, human values, human decision-making. One young officer asked, "What if we had fought you? What if we had fired on your ship when you approached?" Zara smiled sadly. "Then we would have had a harder choice to make. But I think we still would have tried to help. Because humans believe that everyone deserves a chance to choose life, even when they choose violence."